Welcome back to another episode of Inside the Agency. I'm joined today by Chris, agency coach and founder of Dynamic Agency OS, a program designed to help agency owners build recurring revenue, high margin offers, and better go-to-market strategies. But today we're tapping into something unique and something that's becoming an unavoidable reality for agency owners, and that's hiring. And more specifically, smarter hiring in 2025. This is a topic I live and breathe at Team Virtual, and one that Chris felt was the need of the hour from his communications every day with agencies. So, Chris, welcome to Inside the Agency.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Perfect. So, before we dive in, can you share a bit about your own unique journey from military service to helping agencies scale smarter?
Sure. So after college, I went into the Army because that's what most people do with an English degree. And yeah, did 7 years as active duty as an infantry officer. And then when looking for jobs, interestingly, didn't have a lot of options because apparently jumping out of airplanes and doing all those fun things that I got to do, or it's not directly correlated to what you do in the corporate world. But so I started working at an agency, and after about 9 months, I became their head of operations. Then after a couple of years, became CEO. Did that for a bit, and then kind of wanted something different, so I stepped down and started running a Dynamic Agency OS, which I saw as one of the biggest challenges for agencies, which is we're just with so many more agencies coming up today, it's harder to stand out and to differentiate. And so this is the Dynamic Agency OS is a positioning operating system to help agencies with just standing out from all of that and to hopefully get more consistent revenue so you can have a predictable business.
Absolutely. I think with every market now being so saturated and there being so much noise, it was enough maybe 20 years ago to say we're a marketing agency, and maybe 10, 15 years ago, it was enough to say we are a web design agency. But now, even all of those micro niches are becoming so saturated that you need to really position yourself as a very specific industry expert. And that's what I see a lot of coaches saying, and that's what I see a lot of successful agencies doing. And, really trying, really being able to separate themselves from all the noise in the market. But when we first started talking about this episode and possible ideas, you immediately brought up contracting, and more specifically, an approach to hiring for agencies that lets them, grow in a more cost-effective, scalable way, tap into global talent markets, and just hire when they really need it most. So, and that's what I'm doing at Team Virtual, where I help agencies hire offshore, which is closely aligned with this. So, we're unpacking today what smarter hiring looks like in 2025. But before we get to that, let's start with the elephant in the room. Why is hiring so broken for agencies right now?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of reasons. I just read a handful of things, but one they did a poll with Gen Z, who all these kids coming out of college who are expecting like a minimum of 120K plus salaries, and that's just what they believe with zero experience in the market. They just feel they deserve that.
Yeah.
Which maybe some of them do, right? If you're a doctor or something, like cool, got it. But for the most part, it's like for some reason, there's been this inflated, I don't know, like financial piece. And it might be just that when you go to social media, you get all these like gurus, right, who are talking about how they're making so much money and they're barely working. And like this is, and so it kind of raised the bar for all of these people who have now
Yeah.
grown up on social media who are seeing that constantly.
Yeah.
And so they don't realize that, no, well, 60K might be your starting salary, and then you find ways to bump that up.
Yeah.
The So that's one piece. There's probably the other piece of like the average like salary for employees has not really gone up over the past decade to 2 decades versus the cost for homes has like dramatically increased.
Yeah.
I mean, just within the past, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, my home has like doubled in value. And so if I was just getting it, like I couldn't afford this house 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it's just they're probably using that as a frame of reference as well. But so anyways, that makes it a lot harder. There's also the challenge, at least in the US, where every state has their own laws for hiring,
Yeah.
and which is awesome. Like as someone who believes states should have some rights and be able to do that.
Yeah.
It also makes it a challenge when everyone's moving to this remote environment. And now my company in Maine, I have to figure out what are the laws in California, what are the laws, in Pennsylvania, and I have to be able to do the math and make sure that like the numbers all make sense for me, but then also that I'm not breaking the law because that state could come after me for various reasons.
Yeah.
And so it's just there's all this extra risk, and it's challenging now to be a business owner and having to figure that out.
Yeah. And I think if you put that into context for a small business owner, because again, even within the agency, if you're a $2 million agency, a lot of this might not be relevant to you because you can hire someone to do paid media or SEO for 100,000. But for agency owners doing 25, 30, 40K a month, that is the majority of agency owners who are just beginning to take off and see some traction in the market. But also with that, they're starting to get buried under layers of different work that they're now starting to see with clients coming in. They can't afford that, and that's really difficult for them. So I think that's the target market that's most affected because of this. And absolutely not just the cost of housing and cost of living, inflation, and that's not just the US, that's the UK, and globally we've seen this in most countries where salaries that were okay a while ago just don't work now. So what are you hearing from US agency owners on the ground with these rising costs, benefits, severances, taxes, insurance, compliance laws making all of this harder? What's the word on the ground, and what are the agency owners doing because of this?
So a lot of them are taking the advice to contract rather than just hire entirely. I think one of the challenges that a lot of agencies run into is that they don't plan proactively enough. And so they get stuck looking for like a rescue hire, which at that point, if you're in a bind, right? You need someone in the door. It's like you're going to be forced to pay higher rates, and because you can't spend the time kind of sort of like looking through everybody, finding the best fit candidate for the best price point. And so, yeah, I think the fix that everyone's starting to move more towards is contracting and just knowing, hey, I can find another either company or into like freelancers who have their own business, and I can just outsource to them, get the same results.
Yeah.
Right. But not have to pay these premium rates.
So let's just separate the two. Let's talk about contracting locally first. That instead of a full-time in-house hire, I work with someone for 3 months or 6 months. On the candidate end, that does not look like a lot of job security then. So, and again, top talent, they want job security, they want autonomy, they want to be able to do the work that they love and to be able to stick with the company that they know is looking after them. Right. At the same time, if it's a contractor and they are in this business, then they might be juggling a few different agencies at a time. So then that's not the exact same experience as a full-time dedicated hire who's just working with you and lives and breathes your agency's clientele and values. And at the same time, if you're then working with the freelancer, same thing. They're going to be working with a lot of different clients. Some of the top freelancers, if you go to, let's say, the main platforms, Fiverr, Upwork, they have, I don't know how many orders in queue already. There's a wait list. And even when you get in, you are one of many clients that they're servicing. So you don't feel, it's not the same as a full-time team member. But I still acknowledge that it gives agency owners a flavor of delegating, which is really important. And that's also something I'm going to get into. But yeah, I think that's where contractors and full-time team members, there does still end up being a difference in the two and what actually works for agency owners. But while they are trying to manage this and struggle with this and look at this option and that option and these different things that we're talking about, what does this do to a small agency founder who is actually stuck in, what I call the vicious cycle of three main things that they are doing: acquisition, finding new clients, sales, outreach, delivery, actually giving them the service, and then management, the account management, the client calls and retaining that client. While they're stuck in that and trying to find a solution for this and unable to hire the way they should be, what does it do to them?
I mean, it means they're going to find worse talent, right? Like they're going to, you lower your standards whenever you're overly stressed and when you got too much to do, rather than taking the time and saying, I'm going to spend, part of this week just figuring out exactly what do I want for in this position? Who do I want to look for from character, trait perspectives? And then where can I go find these people, to actually fill that role? Because like one of the challenging pieces with this, right? Top talent is they're never on Indeed, right? They're never going out looking for jobs. Their top talent is being paid top talent prices at some company, and like they might be given an opportunity to go somewhere else, and that's where they'll go. But very rarely are they hunting for a job for themselves. They're just waiting for opportunities to come to them because they've earned that by, I guess, doing their job really well and just having that kind of that respect that comes with it. So from the founder's perspective, right, it's just another thing, another layer of stress that gets added to everything else. So while they're juggling all these other balls, it's like, actually, I have a friend who does a good analogy where it's like as a founder, you're constantly juggling and you have all these balls, but like one of those balls is going to be glass. The other ones might be plastic. So like you got to figure out which plastic ones can fall. Am I okay to drop? Making sure the glass ones don't break. And with hiring is one of those glass balls, but I think it's often mistaken as a plastic one. Where
Yeah.
like if you have the wrong hire, it can actually hurt your company.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to lower team morale. You could lose clients if this person shows up and under delivers.
Yep.
And so it's way more important of a requirement for the agency than I think it gets credit for.
Yeah. I think that risk of a bad hire, I think one thing it also does is that for an agency owner who finally got over that hurdle of hiring, it sets them back from that
Right.
starting point even. And when they're like, with the
Yeah.
next hire, they'd be even more cautious. Also, let's say with hiring being added to their plate, let's say they delay that. They don't hire right now and they keep doing that thing that agency owners do very often, which is I'll just keep doing it myself. What does that do to them long term? And how dangerous is it to stay in that mindset long term?
Yeah, I mean, it sets the entire company up for failure. One, the founder's likely at some point going to burn out.
Yeah.
Right. Like burnout is rarely because you're just working a lot. It's usually because of the purpose behind what you're doing. You're not connected to it.
Yeah.
And when the founder has to start doing everything, it's really hard to keep up that motivation
Yeah.
sustain for a long period of time. It also really hurts the value of your agency. Like if you're looking to sell at some point, but everything tied back to the founder, like no one wants to buy that business because then they know they have to replace the founder with all of those things. And even if someone comes in to buy and they know they can hire people in order to fill all those roles, there's still no system set up because the founder's been doing it all themselves.
Yeah.
And so you're setting yourself up for way less of a multiple on your sale in the future. But then yeah, even just across the team, and it kind of sets bad expectations for your team when the founder's doing everything, where it's like
Yeah.
they know one, either they can just give it to the founder, or they assume they have to keep taking on responsibilities when they see them, rather than saying, hey, I'm tapped out right now. I'm doing everything that I'm the best fit for. We
Yeah.
need to bring someone else in to do these other tasks. So they're not even thinking about asking for additional hires. But then with your clients, right, if they expect the founder to be in every call now, it is really hard to get out of that, to separate yourself from that so you can actually run the business instead of every single engagement.
Yeah.
And so it feels in the moment, you get this like local benefit of, well, we're staying afloat, but the universal benefit or the global benefit, right, of like, well, we're actually building a company that is self-sustaining.
Yeah.
It's just gone. And so
Absolutely. I think that's where you see the most common thing with agency owners. Let's say that selling the business is a very long-term goal, but even in the short term, what they see is burnout. They can't take leaves, they can't spend time with family. And then the way the business functions is also not scalable. They can only be on so many client calls in a day. But if they're able to hand this to account managers and every account manager is handling 6 to 8 clients, that's a way to scale then, where they can keep adding account managers and they follow systems and processes that have been built out. So it's really important then to build out those systems and processes that allow you to step back from all of that day to day, but then also be able to delegate and bring in some talent. So there's one other interesting thing that we talked about when we first spoke, and that was the term recruitment debt. You used that phrase. I really liked it. And can we unpack that for a second? That what does recruitment debt look like for an agency owner or any business who's hiring or in recruitment, and how that accumulates over time?
So I like looking at business as just a game of debts, right? You are always accruing debts somewhere. And whether it's debt through like the attention that you're able to provide or actual financial debt. And so if I say, hey, we really need to focus on our marketing, and I have a small team, where I might be focused entirely on marketing, and now sales and delivery just loses some attention and we start falling behind. So we accrue debt in those areas.
Yeah.
And that could be okay if it's a deliberate decision, right? Because then we can go address that. When people take on investment, we're now accruing financial debt, so we have to pay the investors back, but it means we can go faster everywhere else. And so we're making choices. I think recruitment is one of those areas, like when you look at your team, where you can very quickly start to accrue debt without realizing it. And even if you make bad hires, right, because you have a poor recruitment process, you're still adding this debt. If you don't have, well, one, and this is completely self-serving, I tell every agency they need a niche. We need one audience, one problem, one solution.
Yeah.
And the reason is because it gives us one variable that we're working with within the company.
Yeah.
Most agencies have 3 audiences, right? They might solve multiple problems. They might have 10 different services that they offer. And so when you multiply all those together, you might have like 100+ different variations of what you could be doing for any given client.
Yep.
And so when I bring on a new team member now, I have to train them on 100+ different things for that company. And
Yeah.
so the onboarding process takes more than 90 days. And even there, say you could get them up to speed in 90 days, they're not going to get great results anywhere because they have to go back and reference way too many things in order to be productive.
Yeah.
But if you have one thing that you're doing, super easy for you to bring that person on and say, this is all we do. Just shadow me, right? Well, you'll see how I do it. Then I'm going to shadow you so I can see how you do it. And then you can just go off and do it on your own. And now we've just cut that 90-day time frame down to like 30 days.
Yeah.
And everything gets a lot faster. Even like for sales, right? If we only sell one thing, it's real easy to hand off sales to someone else. I can bring on a hire, say, this is how I sell, watch these recordings, and they should be able to pick it up pretty quick because they don't have to like consider all of these different things that, well, maybe we could add this to the package and like they'll like, it's like, no, we do one thing.
Yeah.
Right. And we just have to focus on that. But so when we're talking recruitment debt, it's like, if we're bringing in a hire and we don't have a plan to do this, or, oh, and man, I'm getting ahead of myself. If we don't have a plan, right, now that hire's not efficient and our lack of having a recruitment strategy for like bringing the right person in to show them the right systems is actually hurting us. But then even more so, if we don't have those systems and we have all that chaos going on within our business, that also means we don't have the systems to be able to know when we need to hire and who to hire for.
Yeah.
And so that we end up accruing recruitment debt purely through just delaying that decision.
Yeah. I think to put it into another practical example, let's say I'm an agency owner. I delayed a hiring decision by 3 months, all the time that I didn't make that hire. And I was working on that stuff myself. That time I spent is recruitment debt. Then on top of that, when I did hire 3 months later, because I got a really big new client and I did it very urgently and I didn't have enough time, and I rushed that hiring decision and it ended up in a bad hire, that just adds to that recruitment debt. Let's say I didn't hire myself and I realized, okay, I have very little time. I'll just give this money to a recruiter. And the recruiter usually says that, okay, if this hire doesn't work, you can come back, in 2 months or 3 months and I'll replace this person. But you're now adding more to your recruitment debt because now you'll have to train that new person. Or if you hired yourself and you then replace that person, that's adding to that debt. And the salaries you paid then, that's also making it go up. So all of this, I think, comes back to what we discussed about recruitment debt. And it's something agency owners oftentimes, or even business owners in hiring, don't consider, where the cost of a bad hire might just be the salaries that you paid for them. But what about the clients that may have exited? What about the hours that you lost? What about the time that you'll have to spend again? And how much is your own time worth? Because if it is worth, as the agency owner, I'm sure it's on the higher end. So you're losing all of that. So I think that's why recruitment debt is something that should be on the mind of every business owner, but especially agency owners trying to get into hiring and maybe avoiding that decision, or maybe when they do make that decision, rushing it because of new clients or new projects, because that does add up. And once it does, it's hard to get rid of. So let's go into our main topic then, with smarter hiring in 2025 and how hiring's changed. When you see agencies hiring today and when they hire overseas to overcome what's happening with the local talent markets, with salaries and with different things, and they take a global approach to their teams and their talent, what is the key outcome you think they're hoping to achieve beyond cost saving?
Yeah, I don't know that most agency owners are thinking about like a holistic picture with their hiring. Yeah. I think they're just, so many agencies are stuck in the day-to-day so much that they just want relief.
Yeah.
And so they're looking for anyone they can bring in who just makes that go away so they can focus on other parts of their business.
Yeah.
Which like I guess my model for, well, I have a couple models, but first we got to focus on everything we can be doing within the company to be proactive in all of our decision-making.
Yeah.
And so it requires looking further out, right? One of the things I'll have a lot of my agency clients do is we have like current operations and then future operations. So whereas someone on the team might be responsible for just looking at the day-to-day, are we doing everything we need, within the next 30 days to be successful? And then someone else, or even the same person, if they can shift gears, is just looking further. Okay, our goals for this year are to achieve X, Y, and Z. Looking out, 6 months from now, what do we need there? And starting to make a plan for it now so that we can start backwards planning. So eventually that goes into current operations and we say, all right, we need to hire. So like, let's start, but we can start hiring 90 days before we need someone rather than saying, I need someone immediately.
Yeah.
On the actual hiring front, I recommend agencies follow a more, better, new approach. So the first hire we bring into our agency should be someone who can help us do more of what we're currently doing.
Yeah.
And the reason we want to do this, because we already know it works. We've already got some clients. If we can just do more of that, we can increase our revenue, right?
Yeah.
Which lets us then spend money on other things. It also gives us a lot more data points. Like the more times you do something, the more repetitions that you have through this means you get to see things. And when you're spotting those patterns, it means you also get to see what's wrong a lot quicker. So the next hire is someone who can do things better. And it doesn't have to be like someone who does the same thing, but their performance is better. It could be someone on the team who just does something better. It could be an ops hire, right? Someone who can just enable you to now free up some of your bandwidth so that you can do better work. And then once you have that, you're kind of optimized as much as you can within that one scope. Then let's look at doing something new. And this doesn't have to be a new service. It could be a repositioning of your offer. It could be it can be tons of different things.
Yeah.
But when you follow that more, better, new, and that's how you stack your first probably 6-ish hires. It's like, first we're going to do something more, then we're going to do better, then we're going to do new. And you just repeat that until you get to the point where it's like, okay, now what is our current bottleneck? Is it that we need more of what we're currently doing? We need something better, or do we need something new in order to survive? And then you get to choose where does that hire actually fit in. That gives you a pretty good lens now when you're looking for the hire, like what types of skills you want to find.
Yeah. I think that's an amazing framework, the more, better, and new one. And I'm definitely going to use that with my clients who are still thinking about what their next hire should be, because oftentimes that's the confusion. Like, what should I hire for? Because I remember from a discovery call I did once with an agency owner. It was a web design agency in Manchester. And the agency owner came to me for an executive assistant. And he said, I want someone who can do my email inbox, calendar, things like that. I was like, that's okay. And he was like, okay, can we just rush this call because I have to go back to designing websites? I said, have you considered hiring a web designer? And he said, yeah, the main thing is they don't get my design sense. And secondly, they can be really expensive. So I was like, the way you are hiring someone overseas for this executive assistant role, how about we show you a web designer? And that web designer unlocked so much time for him because that's the role that he then went with. And he saw some candidates, he checked out their portfolios, he gave them a trial task for design. And once he went with that hire, it unlocked SEO for them because he was like, now once we're done building websites, we can help them with their SEO. So I need an SEO specialist as well. And then the next role he came back to me for was a sales rep because he was like, now we need to do more of what we're doing, because that just unlocked more time for him. It allowed him to work on more clients, open the doors to more clients, and offer more services to the clients that were already coming to him or working with him with SEO. So I think, yeah, that's just the more, better, and new approach. That's just really interesting. And I see that, but I don't see a lot of people putting it into that framework and being intentional with it. So that should be a great suggestion. So another thing I wanted to ask was, when do you think hiring overseas is the right move and for which roles, and when should one reconsider and stick to local? Because I do believe there are use cases. I oftentimes suggest that for every local team member you can have 3 to 4 overseas team members working under them, or whatever framework you have, because you want some sort of cultural alignment. You want someone who can go in office to meet clients, do proposals, presentations in person, because that's also very common with agencies. So what kind of mix do you suggest, and where do you think it's the right move to go global, and when should you just stick to local?
Yeah, I think it really depends on, I mean, there's tons of variables, right? So it's going to depend on a lot of things. I think the type of service you're offering, I think a lot of time I like keeping like account management type positions in-house, because those are individuals who they are going to make or break my business based on that, versus contract hires. It's a lot easier to find a new hire from the contract side, and to make sure you got the right person. Obviously, like the concerns that I think most agencies have when looking to contract is going to be, one, do they speak English well? Can they work on our schedule? Right? Like things like that. And so the way you kind of can mitigate a lot of that is, one, if they're not client facing, and they're just like, one, you don't need to be like a perfect English speaker in order to do this. I've actually hired offshore with people who have corrected my grammar before, and I have a degree in English, so I'm good on that. But in order to do the work, you don't have to be like whatever the peak fluency level for English is, right? To just be in the background doing the work. It goes cross languages for most tasks that we would have them do, design, development, all of these things. And then scheduling, if I'm building my agency appropriately, right, and setting it up to be proactive, I can look at the tasks that I have on my plate and give someone work for the next 90 days, right? If we're doing quarterly strategies for our clients, I know exactly what tasks need to be done. So now I don't even need someone who's working on my schedule. I need someone who can just get the work done at the time that best fits them so they can do their best work.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times the complaints that agencies have, it's really because they're putting themselves in a position where they're not set up to actually run at an efficient and effective kind of manner.
Yeah.
And so I'm a fan of hiring, especially if they don't need to meet with the client and be on our time zone.
Yeah.
Like I would contract. I would, because there's cost savings. You're going to find one when you can open up your pool to even more talent, right? You're going to find better talent if you're just looking locally. But that would be kind of my personal, I guess, way. Account managers generally in house, and
Yeah.
then everyone else could be contracted.
Absolutely. I think even with team members that you have overseas that are working your hours, because with Team Virtual, all of our associates follow the time zone of our clients and they're not forced to do it. They're asked if they're open to doing it during the recruitment process, and they only go forward if it's something that they're comfortable with. But
Yep.
When you still want that local touch, maybe it's just cultural nuances, or maybe it's physical presence if you need to actually go and be somewhere and meet a client in person.
Right.
So I think those roles are definitely ideal to do locally, but still a lot of the media buyers, let's say, that work with agencies that we've placed them with, they are oftentimes for some of the technical stuff or for some of the reporting on those client calls with the account director or the account manager. So they are still in those client facing roles, which means that shouldn't be your compass for judging if they'll be good at English or interactions, because
Yep.
you can find someone who's good at that everywhere. But ideally, you do want some of your account managers to be local for just, cultural nuances and being there if they need to and go and meet the client. Let's say they need to shoot a case study in person, just interview them for something, or visit some of their sites if they're a manufacturer. That's just only possible if that person is working with you locally. I think
I should
that's
probably, can I add a caveat? I
yeah,
think even on the account manager piece, I think even contracting locally, I wouldn't do for an account manager purely because they're like your account managers are the ones who are actually driving any like expansion of your accounts.
yeah,
And so I would just love for them to be in-house. So even if I'm looking for a US based contractor, I still probably wouldn't give them an account management role, especially if there's a risk where if a contractor and your company's actually set up better for this side. But I've heard of agencies who bring on a contractor, someone US based who is now running, 3 or 4 different accounts. And then they decide, hey, I don't need to work for it. I can go run my own accounts, and they take those 4 clients with them.
yeah.
And so it's like, it's too much of a risk for me to want to do something like that.
Absolutely. The account manager, they know too much for you to have someone in that position who you can't trust. So that trust factor is
Right.
also really important.
Yeah.
And again, someone where your agreements locally are also airtight, because that's one thing I do want to get into later on as well. When you're hiring overseas, you can't contractually oblige them, that person, or engage them into a legal contract in any way because your entity is not in their country. So if anything goes wrong, and yes, breach of contract does happen, but at least if you're in that country, you can take some sort of an action. But if you're not, you are basically on your own, which is often
Right.
why someone works with talent partners like ourselves, where they have that peace of mind that we are locally on ground in their country, not just for that part, but for so many other reasons. We can go and meet that person. We can supply them equipment if they need a microphone, a webcam, a laptop, or anything else, or a co-working space. We can engage them and kind of just have that local on ground hands-on support as well. But yeah, that's something I'm going to dive into when we just cover EOR providers like ourselves. So one thing I also wanted to ask with this, new approach to hiring, what are some of the biggest myths holding agency founders back from taking a global approach to their teams?
I mean, I think it's probably everything I just brought up, where they think, oh, like nobody's going to be able to speak English well enough, right? They're not going to be able to work our hours. There's probably a handful of people. I don't know how many. I'm guessing on this because I've talked to some people who have this, where it's like, well, overseas talent doesn't understand what we do in the way, so like they're not going to be able to deliver at the level that we could. It's like, I don't know. I've seen a lot of pretty incompetent Americans who are still holding those jobs. So
Yeah.
um, I think it probably just takes some exposure to be able to realize like, oh yeah, there are smart people everywhere. Look at that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I would say those are probably the biggest.
So, yeah, A, there's the argument for, smart and incompetent people being everywhere. But then B, I would say that with platforms like Fiverr and Upwork, you'd be surprised how much exposure these platforms have created globally to
Hmm.
clients and businesses in the US and UK, and how they're working with contractors or freelancers in all sorts of countries, to the point that you're likely to hire someone through us. Let's say you're a roofing company, or not, well, we work with digital agencies. So let's say you're a digital agency working with roofing companies. We are so likely to find you someone who's already worked on roofing company ads and local SEO for a specific state,
Right.
and align you with a specific state in the US. And that's not going to be tough to find, because these
Mhm.
platforms have allowed these people to get exposure to all of that work. So, firstly, there's that. And then, secondly, we talk about language. Um, Everything in Pakistan is taught in English from a very early grade. And on top of that, since it's not our first language, there's somewhat of a pressure to actually learn it, because it is the language of the world. If you want to survive anywhere or work globally, that is a
Right.
language you need to know. And again, it's still the language being used here in the corporate environment, in businesses, in work setups. So yeah, English is very well used here and very common. But
Mhm.
on top of that, you're also very likely to find people who've been abroad and had that international exposure. For instance, yesterday I forwarded a profile to a client for a paid media manager who was a University of Arizona graduate who actually came to the US, studied, and then came back, because they were on a student visa. So, and then when you talk about experience, my last hire for an agency was someone who was at their last position managing 600,000 in monthly ad spend, decade of experience in paid media, instant fit for them personality wise, right from the first interview. So I think it's just a mental hurdle oftentimes that agency owners have, where they think, oh, they might not know English, or they won't know our market. That's oftentimes a very big excuse. But
Mhm.
and try this yourself. This is an experiment. I want you to at some point go to Fiverr or Upwork and just search the top freelancers, filter to top rated, and I can guarantee you at least 30 to 40% in the top 10 will be from Pakistan or India or Bangladesh. So
Yeah.
that's just so common now. And they got there by working on international projects and working with clients of all sorts of sizes and nature, and different agencies and their clienteles. So yeah, I think that's often the mental hurdle: language expertise, culture alignment, time zone. Time zone is a big one as well, because we're literally on the opposite end for the US. But again, talent here understands that the US is the biggest market, and that's where our clients are, so they're happy to adjust their working hours accordingly, and it's an informed decision they're making to align themselves with the biggest market in the world, because that's where they know the work is, that's where they know the projects are, and they need to be on those calls for those people. So it's oftentimes a very easy decision for people to make, where they're like, yeah, that's where all my work is coming from. I should be up when those guys are awake. It's an
Right.
informed decision they make and can keep it going long term.
Yeah. What's interesting, so I love how you guys are structured for that, where it's like, hey, do you want to work these hours? Because that's what the client expects. They say yes. It's like, cool, we got a contract that we're gonna move forward with. I guess my thinking for agencies is like, if I'm gonna pay someone even just for an hour of work,
Yeah.
would I want them working in their peak hour or when they're probably like at their lowest point, right? The trough hour.
Yeah.
And I don't know that anyone can be like at 2 a.m. be as effective as they could at 2 in the afternoon. And not to say like people are not working well, like their period, right? But it's like what for me to be able to contract someone and say, hey, here are the tasks I need from you. Work in the hours that best fit you so we can get your best work. It's like it just feels better, but then that requires the agency to be on top of their game in
Yeah.
order to figure out all the details, make sure I got everything set up for them. How can we, are there still some hours that we're going to overlap to make sure that we can like interface if we need to?
Yeah.
But I think a lot of agencies take the easy route and just say, no, you have to work our hours, because then
Yeah.
they don't have to go do all that stuff. They can just send tasks on a daily basis that like, well, hey, we forgot to give you this. So like, here's everything we need. And they know that person's online during that time
Yeah.
rather than just take ownership, like set up your system, set up your processes so that we already know what tasks have to be done, and now you can get the best output from everybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a team. I had outsourced when running an agency. We had someone from the Philippines, and we would do a team huddle at noon Eastern, every Monday. But for her, that was like after midnight. And it was just, and she wanted to work those, like it was again part of the agreement and stuff. Like she loved it. And because of her role, she kind of needed to be active during US hours. She was doing a lot of our support stuff for some software we had built. But that's where I just got this idea, like, man, if like it's awesome that she's willing to work those hours to make sure she can do the job, but it'd be great if I didn't need her to work those hours specifically. Like,
Yeah.
because I'm sure that takes a beating on the person too. I know I couldn't go back to night work anymore.
Yeah.
There was a point in my life where, I mean, in the army, I could be awake all night, walking around, night vision, right, going through the woods, like doing whatever, and then I'd hit the weekend, I'd sleep, and I'd be back on my feet the next day. Versus now, like I get one rough night of sleep, and I'm like, I'm the entire week, I'm like, oh man, like this is rough.
Yeah.
But so for someone to make that their lifestyle, it's like, yeah,
Absolutely. I know it's tough, but one thing I've noticed is that you do unpack this during interviews and also through your
yeah.
personality assessments. Some people are actually night owls and they do their
Oh
best.
yeah, 100%. My
They do their
wife,
best work when
yeah,
everything's quiet, no emails, no phone calls, no one knocking on the door, no one coming to them for
yeah,
anything. And I think that would be the ideal case for someone like this. And then the
yep,
second thing would be that you start off working the same hours, A, to establish trust, but B, if they need anything and they have any question that was missed regarding the task you've assigned to them, they're going to get an answer for you from you next day. And then you're going to get the task back another day later. So maybe for the first month or two, while they're still trying to adjust, it's ideal to do the same hours. And then after that, once trust is established, you know, I hand this off to this person and I always get it back by whenever I sign on the next day. And that's when you
right,
can just let them be like, okay, you should go back to your hours and you should do the hours when you actually do your best work, like you said. So
yeah, I
yeah, I
like that
think,
approach.
yeah, there's different cases for it. Some people do, prefer the nighttime, but oftentimes with people who don't, I think just a little bit of time of struggle for them, but just to align ideally, and then they can always go back. So one of my last questions for this particular section is, why do you think marketing itself is the best use case for hiring overseas and working with global talent? Because there's other industries, there's legal, there's back office, there's data entry, finance. A lot of industries work with global talent and outsource, oftentimes support, DevOps, and you hire globally. But why would marketing, and that's what I think that it is the best use case for a service like this?
Yeah, I think because there's less of a barrier from a like regulatory perspective, right? If I need someone in legal, I want someone who specializes in the U.S. in that legal asset.
Yeah.
Even finances, state to state, will change. Like I have my tax guy who is based here in Maine, and he is fully up to date on every law in the Maine tax code.
Yeah.
To the point, like last time I went in, he had books open on his desk of just like any changes to like the Maine tax code. He could, so like even I don't know that I would even go to different states for those types of services because it's like so specialized in that thing. But with marketing, sales, like anything like that, even like development, right? It's something you can learn cross space. The regulations are owned by whatever the algorithm gods are. So whether it's Google or LinkedIn or any of those, which
Yeah.
you don't need, like you get it just by being on the platform. You don't need to be local to a certain area paying attention to the news. And so
Yeah.
I think that's probably the biggest reason. And I personally, I think it's also nice because there's so much flexibility within each of those spaces, right? With marketing, I can have my idea for marketing and I could still come up on a campaign that doesn't work. And I need someone else's ideas in order to get this thing off the ground. And
Yeah.
so, like with finances and legal, there is one path to success. It's like you have to do it this way. Whereas in marketing, no, we can bring in all these different ideas and one of them might be the winner. And so I think it gives you that flexibility to be able to look for anyone, right, who can bring in new ideas. And actually, I think we should promote getting those new ideas and getting challenging ideas in order to get something better in our campaigns.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's also the fact that marketing itself, it's all online. And the algorithm gods themselves have created the path for you to learn. Meta has Meta
Yeah.
Blueprint, Google has Digital Garage. You have to learn everything there. So there's no specific university or institute that's holding on to all the knowledge where you need to go through to be the best at it. You can learn it online. And then
Mhm.
also agencies themselves are working with clients globally more often than not. And campaigns are going live across time zones and across continents for agency owners, whether it's for an e-commerce brand or whether it's helping a business in a different state or even a different country generate leads. So it's the borderless nature of marketing as well, where I think you add someone to your analytics account or your search console, and they're kind of in the game now and they understand everything. And they don't have to be in the office to do that. They just need to have access to the right things and they're able to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
How important do you think is it for agency owners to have a hiring process?
I think it's one of the most important things, especially if you don't want to accrue more recruitment debt. The having a system, one, to identify when we need to hire, but then how do we now initiate that process? What is the interviewing process, the search process, and then once we bring them in, what's the onboarding process? And I think that would give you that full circle for bringing someone in.
Yeah.
But the most agencies, one, they go to rescue hires, right? They're not looking far enough out. And so they're like, hey, I have a problem now. I need someone now if I want to unlock this. And so they skip ahead and they just rush through everything and they never set that process. So the next time they need a hire, there's nothing kind of documented for them to work from. Again, they're just going back to, well, I need this person now. Let's get them in the door.
Yeah.
And so by the time you have, 10 different hires that you've made, you still don't have a process and you don't know how to find the best hire at any given time.
Yeah. I think having your own hiring process is like really crucial because each agency functions in a different way. They have their different way of doing things. They have a different clientele. And in order to find talent that works for them and would be successful for them, they need to have a process that filters that out and achieves that in their scenario. So a process for attracting quality candidates, you can't just pray and spray. You can't just post a job and think you'll get some candidates. You need to have some sort of approach to employer branding where you put some things in place where you're like, okay, these are things top talent is looking for. And this is how we can be at the front of that situation and be like, this is how we'll attract quality candidates. But then vetting them, how many interviews do you need to do? What kind of questions should you ask? What kind of trial tasks or assessments do you usually do to get them through that? And at the end of that, how does that end up giving you the ideal candidates for your agency? So yeah, I think that's crucial as well for agency owners to have, because agency owners are not HR specialists, which is something that they oftentimes think is the job of an HR specialist. And they're like, okay, they'll just do some interviews and post some jobs, but you need to have a process. And how do you think that process, while we're talking about it, differ for someone you want to hire globally or contract to a traditional hire? What would you change?
Yeah. I don't know that it would change much. There's a document that I give to all my clients that I kind of politely demand that they fill out for all their team members, and some choose to do it, some don't. But I call it the growth canvas, and it's essentially, it shows everything about that job position. So like your roles, responsibilities, who do you report to, right? What are the KPIs we're determining success for your position on? What competencies do you need within this position? So it's like a 4 to 5 page document, but it's a working document.
Yeah.
And so the founder fills it out, or whoever the hiring manager is, they fill it out as that for whatever role they need. That person comes in. Now, every quarter, I'm going through that with my team member and saying, okay, how did we perform based off what we said your requirements for this position are? How did you do? Let's talk about it. But then we might actually change things as we go, where they'll say, you know what? I've realized I'm not actually very good at this and I want to get better, but I'm really good at this. Because we have some flexibility on the team right now, could I just shift this position more to doing these things? And so you document it within that position, but then we have that little gap. And so when we create a new document or a new growth canvas, we make sure that gap is included in this. And say what's nice about this. So now I can use this as a job posting, right? I can put it out and everyone can see every little detail of what this position is going to require. All of that information is there. If I lose a team member at any point, I'd have their growth canvas becomes a job posting, and I can just flip it and say, here's what I need. And what's more important is that a lot of times we have team members over time that take on more work, and they're doing things that we don't necessarily think about initially. Yeah. And so if I have someone running accounts and they're an SEO specialist and they're doing all this, I might just say, hey, I need an SEO specialist. But I miss that. Oh, well, they were also, running 3 different accounts. They were also doing these for the ops team. Maybe they were interfacing with the design team for different things. But those are all captured in this document. So now when I go find an SEO specialist for anywhere, whether it's contracted or in-house, I know other competencies that I would like them to have. And so I can get way more detailed and way more refined in my search. And maybe it's 2 positions that we need to bring in, or I have to take stuff from that one growth canvas and find someone else on my team. But it also means we're not going to miss these things. Where a lot of times there's someone leaves and there's gaps that are left within the business that the founder ends up having to take back on because they didn't plan for it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would have that growth canvas. And you can create this doc, however, like for listeners, create it however you want. You just need to be able to capture everything. But whether it's contractors or in-house, I'd probably be doing the same thing, like following the same path. I think the big difference, again, would be, are the requirements of the role forcing me to hire locally, or can I find a contractor?
Yeah.
I would say for most positions, it could be either or. And so now we might look at a price point for what are we able to actually spend on a new hire right now. And then I would use that as my decision-making criteria.
Yeah. I think most of the stuff or most of the process stays the same. You might have to add a few different layers if you're doing overseas, or some steps might differ. For instance, you might have to add an extra layer for communication if you feel like that is going to be, a pain point or something that you might struggle with. You can add a simple English assessment to your process. And then obviously time zone alignment, you might not have to think about that when you're hiring locally, but overseas, you have to have that layer. And maybe even schedule interviews around that time to see if they show up on time and how they're showing up. And it should give you an idea if they're okay with those hours. And yeah, a few different things that we've already discussed that can be a red flag for people when they're thinking about hiring overseas. I would say just add that to your hiring process and see if that actually clears out for you on its own. If you add an English assessment, the communication thing might just solve by itself, because they'll take that task and a third party is actually telling you how they're communicating. And then you have their interviews and their live communication as well to pair with that. So I think there are a few differences, but what you said about the growth canvas as well, I think we need a link to that in the description, and something a lot of agency owners could be using, because it would show what success looks like in this role and what it's looked like in the past for this position or for other positions, or maybe what it didn't look like. And that informs your future hiring decisions. And like you said, your job descriptions and maybe even the recruitment process, because you remember when we hired that person, we weren't really vetting for that, but they brought that to the table and it changed everything. So how about this time we intentionally vet for that and we look for that particular skill?
Right.
So I think that's going to be really useful. My last section, before we just go into a quick rapid fire, is the identity shift. You've got these systems, you've been introduced maybe through this podcast or for, wherever you get your information, to different hiring models, and you have got your systems in place, but there's still a mental leap agency owners have to make to go from doing to delegating. So let's talk about that for a second. Why do agency owners resist delegation when they know they need it?
Yeah, so there's 2 things at play here. First, most agency owners start their agency because they're really good at a skill. They enjoy doing it. And they're like, I can do this better than someone else. My method is better. And so they build a company around it. And eventually they have a team around them. And they're like, I started this to do this work. And now I'm needing to run a business. And so it's really hard for them just to shift into that. So one of the things that I actually do with my clients is like, pick the things that you actually want to do, because you are the founder. You can keep some of these tasks. You just have to be deliberate in the trade-offs. So maybe, yeah, you do keep doing design as the founder, and that's okay. And you're still in the day-to-day, but you're hiring someone to manage everything else that you should be doing.
Yeah.
So we're still delegating. We're just changing what everyone believes you should be delegating as a founder versus what they think you should be taking on yourself. I think there's also this like quad chart where it's the top, you have tasks that you like and the tasks you don't like. Then you get the tasks you're good at and the tasks you're not good at.
Yeah.
If you're not good at something and you don't like it, right, it's super easy to get rid of that. Just give it to someone else. No one has to question that. The challenge that most agencies founders run into are the things that they're not good at, but that they like doing.
Yeah.
And they'll keep these tasks because they just enjoy it. But the team is begging them, like, please just give it to me. Like, hire someone who can do this.
Yeah.
Because we're struggling with your outputs. That's one of those things that I see pretty often with agency owners. And it's like, we have to figure out, how do we show you that you're not the best fit for this anymore? And like, we need to bring someone else in to do that. And usually it's just getting some feedback from the team. And once they realize, oh, the team acknowledges that I'm not very good at this, then it's easy for them to hand it off.
Yeah. I think that chart's really important. I've heard about that before. And again, it's just ideally what you should be able to do is do what you love, and do more of it. And ideally for more people that you want to do it for, more clients. So the best way to do that is to actually figure out what you're not good at or what you actually hate doing, but you want to do less of. And that's a great suggestion. And other than that, from the agencies that you worked with and some agency owners that you must have seen struggle with it, while others actually, it comes to them naturally. What does that mindset shift really look like going from doer to builder? Saying, I'm actually not going to do it myself. I am going to create a document and a system and hand it over to someone or train someone to do it.
Yeah. So it's a hard shift for anyone to make. And we usually start by just tying really tightly into their goals. And if I can paint the picture for them that like you are not going to achieve these targets you have set by doing all of this yourself.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out, what can we do? The easiest way that I found to delegate is that they take, this is a Tim Ferriss thing. You give everyone on your team like a certain level of responsibility where it's like, hey, Bill, you are able to make $50 decisions, right?
Yeah.
If it's going to cost us, if your decision is wrong and it's going to cost us more than $50, you have to come to me.
Yeah.
And we have to talk and then we'll execute. Eventually he's going to make a bunch of decisions that are good and he never has to talk to you about the $50. And so we say, hey, Bill, you can now make a $500 decision.
Yeah.
Right. And we keep upping it as their level. And so one, that's giving them the confidence as that team member, but it's also giving the founder confidence that like, oh, I can give these tasks to people. Look at how much I'm actually able to offload this way.
Yeah.
And eventually that team member gets up to $5,000, $50,000 decisions. I mean, for any agency owners listening, imagine if every person on your team could make $50,000 decisions and you were okay with, like, you felt good and confident that they could make those. Like, how much different would you feel about your business?
Absolutely. And I think oftentimes when agency owners are delegating, they'll actually train someone perfectly and give them a task or give them a system to do something. They'll be doing that really well. But there comes that one variable that might not have been covered. And based on that, you have a decision to make. And like you said, those decisions come back through Slack or Zoom meetings to the agency owner. And that's where they might have, tried to step away from that task, but they're still kind of involved. But if you could have some sort of way to train people to make decisions and obviously start small, like you said, that's one way to do it gradually, but also have a process by a process of elimination. If you can't do this, this is your best decision. And I give you the right to take that decision. So that really allows you to then step back, because then you don't have things that keep coming back to you over Slack, and you can really focus on other things and other areas of the agency.
Yeah. A lot of times agency owners get so focused on the outcome rather than the process to make that decision. And that's one of the things that we work on. It's like, what is our decision-making process? So if you look at like the best investors, right, they have their system for investing. And so even if they lose money, like they can go back and beat themselves up all they want. But if they made the decision with the information they had available and it was like the best decision they could make, then they don't need to beat themselves up. And so like, that's what we should be looking at. As long as your team members are making the right decision with the information that they have available, even if the outcome isn't great, we got to still celebrate them for making that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. A way from them to know that if everything's pointing to that, I have the sign off for you to do that, and not have any blame come to you later on or second guess your decision making. So yeah, I think the last one here is, how do you avoid micromanaging, but still stay connected to quality and have things the way you want? So you're stepping back, but you're not stepping away,
Yeah. One of the processes I work with clients through, and I recommend every agency does this, is we actually design our solution. And so we say, okay, this is the problem we're trying to solve. Here's how we actually solve them. We map out all the steps. For every step, you have inputs and outputs. And so like, we know in order to do your onboarding, we need this information from you. Then we can onboard you. That's what's going to give us all these outputs. Those outputs often feed your next step. So it's all sequential and important. But as you get into those subsequent steps and you're listing everything out, so say step one of our onboarding is like giving you access to like a welcome document, like a welcome page, right? And it has all this information. We can put in there, what does good look like, right? If we're doing this right, what should the outcomes be for this specific piece? And then do we have examples that we can reference that are great examples for people? If we can do that for each single step, the team now has everything they need. They have a swipe file that they can look at for examples. They have everything else. I don't need to micromanage, because I can say, well, are you doing X, Y, and Z? And they say, yes. It's like, all right, you're going to get the right outcome because we've thought through this proactively, which again, the reactiveness of agencies comes back. But I would just say documenting all of it, and not necessarily documenting. I don't believe like that SOPs are the end all be all, right? We don't need to have like this perfect follow every single step, because we want some flexibility within it. But we should be able to say like, well, does what you're doing cover these things? And if it does, then we're good. I don't need to spend as much time watching you while we still get to maintain that quality.
Absolutely. And again, gradually you might see things getting better. You might not get the perfect things exactly how you do it the first time, but the more time and trust you put in your team members and help them follow the blueprint, and if that's laid out correctly, that should help them get to the exact thing you want without you having to micromanage them at each step. And then again, since you aren't stepping away from the agency entirely, we want you to go from being a manager to maybe a director, where you still have those catch-up calls. You can always share feedback. You can explain to them what you thought about that last client proposal or the company article that went out, but not be involved in it every step of the way and have it improved on the next one maybe. So your voice is still heard and you still have a pulse on the agency, but you're not stuck in every single thing. So coming to our rapid fire before we close this.
Yeah.
You can give me quick answers, quick burst answers. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here because a lot of these things, it's hard to give short and quick answers to these. So yeah, if
challenge accepted.
Elaborate on, yeah, go ahead if you want to elaborate on something. So biggest red flag you see in agency offers or their go-to-market strategy?
Not having a single audience, problem, and solution that they're targeting.
Amazing. If you could wave a wand and fix one mistake most agency owners make, what would it be?
Not having one audience, one problem, one solution. Same thing. Just not niching down is definitely the biggest challenge.
Got it. What advice for more leads and better pipelines?
Is it bad if my answer is the same thing?
Absolutely not.
When you have that one audience, one solution, one problem, you're able to make a compelling offer. That compelling offer, it makes you way more appealing. But the fastest way to drive leads is to talk about the problem that they are facing with such clarity that they just assume you have the solution. That is how you are going to do way better in your lead generation, by talking about the problem, not your solution. People are tired of having this stuff shoved down their throat. And so, yeah.
Got it. I have a feeling this is going to be the same answer for the next one, but I'm still asking. One advice for better sales calls and conversion.
Yeah, I'll rephrase it though. So when you do have that one compelling offer and you do one thing like we talked about earlier, right? It is so much easier to get into the sales process and actually work someone through it. I have had clients who come to me a little concerned because they're like, hey, I don't need to do proposals anymore. Is that normal? And it's like, yeah, because you're so clear in what you're offering. We don't need to customize every little piece of this. It's, hey, do you want this solution to the very important problem we know you have? And they say yes. And it's like, boom, let's do business.
Yeah. One thing agency owners need to start doing or looking into today.
Niching. That's work in their positioning so that they can create an actual go-to-market so that they're not reliant on referrals. That is probably the biggest challenge for agencies. Like I've worked with $2+ million agencies who got there purely on referrals. And then those referrals dry up and it's like, what do you do now? You have a huge team at this point, right? Comparatively, and you have no way to actually drive new business.
Yeah. I think if I could add to this one, when I started doing what I'm doing, I knew from day one, I want to work with digital agency owners. And I knew I only want to source marketing talent. With outsourcing, I could have done every role under the sun and I could have just made this an outsourcing business. And you want someone for finance and accounts, I'll do that. And you want someone for copywriting, we'll do that as well. Because I knew I want to be able to speak to one audience and let them know that we are the experts in this particular space. But then even that proved to be too big of a niche where I was like, not all marketing talent, not developers, not copywriters. We do paid media, we do SEO, so that they know that not only are we the experts in this space, we're also the experts in these particular roles, so that they know that they're confident handing those roles over to us, knowing that they're giving these to the guys who do this day in, day out. So yeah, I think that's one thing I've done myself. And also if it's changed and evolved as I've gone forward, it's not something you have to stick with when you start. You might realize that what you thought was a micro niche was still a niche and you still need to go further or deeper into it. So yeah, with that, we're done with the rapid fire as well. I think just to wrap this up quickly, Chris, thank you so much for joining us. This has been packed with value. And I think this episode gives agency founders a real roadmap to rethink their hiring strategy and consider different options that are out there. And If you want to learn more, check out the links in the show notes. You'll find Chris's Dynamic Agency OS coaching program, his latest content, newsletter, podcast, because Chris puts out a lot of content that you can learn from. So do check it out. And if you're ready to build a high-performing team, I've put some links and resources to Team Virtual. If you have any comments, you can drop them in the comment section and we'll make sure to get back to you, or you can just reach us directly via LinkedIn. Thanks for tuning in and see you on the next one.